Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video, and today we are discussing the KLIPKERS white blend made by the Kleine Wijn Koop, or translated into English, the Small Wine Co-op. The Kleine Wijn Koop was founded in 2018 by winemaker Wynand Grobler and his wife Anya. Now, before all this, Wynand was the winemaker at Rickety Bridge for about 10 years. Rickety Bridge is an estate in France, and Wynand was responsible for everything from winemaking to sales to product packaging and design. This last little tidbit of information probably explains the very considered look and feel that is attached to all the wines coming out of the Kleine Wijn. But Wynand's wines are not just intricate on the outside, they can get pretty geeky inside as well. Wynand has been known to de-stem Cinsaut, set the stems aside, and then dry them over a period of weeks, which ironically involves wetting them from day to day, so that he can then take those older stems and add them back into the ferment in order to bolster structure without getting any of the green, weedy, grassy notes that sometimes come from adding green stalks into the ferment. And beyond just geeky winemaking, he also happens to work with some rather unusual cultivars. Which brings us to our wine of the day, the KLIPKERS White Blend. Now, this little blend has developed a little bit of a cult following over the last couple of vintages, and if you translated it from Afrikaans into English, it would be called the Candlewood Tree White Blend. But if you directly translated KLIPKERS into English, it would become the Stone Candle White Blend, which I think is far pithier a name. Now, because we're in the middle of an extended deep dive into the Grenache family of cultivars, it should come as no surprise that this particular wine is 3/4 Grenache Blanc. The grapes all come from the Voorpaardenberg, kind of north of the Paarl region, and they are grown on a farm called Weltevrede. Weltevrede is run by WILLIE, a man who's an absolute legend within the Voorpaardenberg farming community. Because it was about 20 years or so that he decided to say, to hell with Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. I want to plant crazy white cultivars from Spain and the south of France. Not least of all because these were the cultivars that, as far as he could see, had proven that they could withstand warmer, drier climates. So if you're a fan of unusual white cultivars in South Africa, his is one name that you should know. In fact, I'd go one further and say that he is, alongside legends like Ibn Sadi, one of the few people who is responsible for the broad variety of cultivars that we have available in South Africa today. On Weltevrede, he planted Marsanne, Roussanne, Grenache Blanc, Verdelho. The list really goes on, to the point where now, 20 years after he made that decision, some of South Africa's most highly rated young up-and-coming winemakers are queuing up at his farm gate in order to get hold of this incredible fruit that he planted all those years ago. But back to the wine in the glass. We were talking about Grenache Blanc before I got sidetracked. Now, when I'm detecting Grenache Blanc in a glass, I often am confronted by notes of tangerine, mandarin, kind of ripe, fairly generous citrus, along with a white floral element. But what we get here is a little bit different. There is some citrus and some floral, but there's also a rather interesting tropical element, which is almost like papaya or pawpaw. As I said, the citrus is there, but this feels a little bit fresher and more vibrant. Now, on the nose, that vibrance, there's even a little bit of lime in there, almost certainly comes from a cultivar called Verdelho, which is a Portuguese cultivar. On the island of Madeira, it gets used to make some really fascinating fortified wine, but when it's fermented naturally, it can deliver some incredibly bright acidity and herbal elements. So when we take a sip, well, we see immediately that it doesn't just smell fresh and vibrant. The acidity on the palate is really beautiful. As I say, that Verdelho component bringing through a high acidity, a limey juiciness, and even a pithy texture. Those tropical elements come through to add an element of generosity to what is otherwise a quite fresh, laser-like little offering. So aside from the sensory joy that this wine brings, there is another reason why this little collection of cultivars is really important in a South African context. If you take a look at the climate prediction for the Cape Winelands over the next couple of decades, we can see quite clearly that rainfall is predicted to slowly taper off, and temperatures are predicted to slowly rise. And so as WILLIE saw 20 years ago, we still need to be acting on, and that is to be looking for cultivars that can handle dry, warm Mediterranean climates. Cultivars like Grenache Blanc, Grenache Gris, Verdelho, and thankfully for us, Chenin Blanc, which has over time also proven to be a really hardy cultivar in our context. It's encouraging to know that this idea is being acted on, in that Grenache Blanc and Verdelho were the 10th and 11th most planted cultivar in 2021. Verdelho has grown by over 300% in the last 10 years, and Grenache Blanc has grown by just under 300% in that same time period. As for Grenache Gris, well, there is still only one vineyard in the entire country, but some viticulturists in the Cape Winelands have been finding naturally occurring mutations of the Grenache Gris and marking them and carefully nurturing them to the point where over 3 vintages or so, those mutations can become stable plant material from which you can take cuttings, graft them onto rootstock and plant stable Grenache Gris vines. Hooray for progress! Now, if you enjoyed this video, I would recommend that you subscribe to the HanDrinksSolo YouTube channel, where I release at least 6 videos each month, and we talk about unusual cultivars, viticultural progression, exciting winemakers, and some of the more fascinating wines coming out of the dynamic South African wine.